Let's do some actual examples of translating word problems. So if you say the weight of something divided by 13.6, well, the weight is a number, clearly. The weight of something is going to be a number, but in this particular instance, it's an unknown. So I would just go ahead and replace it with a variable. And when you're choosing a variable, it can be helpful to use something that's actually descriptive. So the weight, you might call W. And so the weight divided by 13.6 is W divided by 13.6. You could write it like that, although probably in algebra the more common way would be to write it as W over 13.6. This division symbol is not typically used all that frequently when we're dealing with algebra. Alright, 6 1/4 inches more than the width. Well, the width, that number, that is a number, I'm going to go ahead and call it W for the width. And if you're talking about 6 1/4 inches more than something, this more than indicates that you're dealing with addition. So we're going to say W plus 6 1/4. I'm not crazy about the fact that this number is written as a mixed number, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it anyway, just to not overcomplicate things here. Alright, 1/2 of the original torque. The torque, I'm not going to use a tau, I'll just use T. So 1/2 of the original torque, well, 1/2 is a number, and whenever you say a number of something else, that word of means multiplication. 1/2 of something is actually kind of a special case that we end up seeing quite frequently, so much so that it was actually brought up on the previous video. 1/2 of something is 1/2 times that number. The sum of two lengths. Well, when we say two lengths here, we need to actually have two separate numbers. We don't know what those numbers are, so you might call them something like L1 and L2. Subscripts are a common way to reuse a letter, but actually be referring to a separate variable. So L sub 1, this is a subscript because it's written smaller and just to the right of the number, and we generally just call it L1 and L2. These would refer to two separate variables. L1 would be the length of the first object, L2 would be the length of the second object. If you're talking about the sum of these numbers, then you want to do L1 plus L2. Of course, if there's better choices for the variables given the rest of the problem, you'd want to use those instead. Alright, the voltage decreased by 5. Voltage, I'll go ahead and call V. Decreased by, this indicates that we're dealing with subtraction. And, well, decreasing something by 5 means subtracting 5 from it. And this is very specifically in this order, V minus 5, not 5 minus V. 5 minus V would give us something entirely different. So this one, misspelled times, 5 times the gear reduction. That one kind of breaks my brain a little bit, because the gear reduction, generally when you're talking about a gear reduction, that means you're cutting it by half or something like that, or cutting it down to 3/4 of what it was. And what does 5 times that number mean? It's not going to be faster. That's just kind of a, I don't know. It's a common thing I see all over in the real world when people say 5 times the reduction, and oftentimes it doesn't really make sense. I'll give my best guess as to what would be meant here, 5 times the gear reduction. If we say the gear reduction is, I don't know. You know what? I'm not going to do that one. I don't like that one. I'm just not going to do it because it doesn't make sense to me. And I will also say that you won't see one of those in this class, or at least not on the test. Alright. 8 inches less than twice the height. This one's a little bit more complicated. You can see that the 8 inches, that's a given number in this. Less than, that's something less than something else. This less than, that should hopefully ring a bell, maybe from that last video. This, when you see less than or subtracted from, that means it's going to be this number here, this twice the height, minus this other number. It kind of flips them around. So I'm going to go ahead and do it like this, just to remind us that we need to swap the order. 8 inches less than twice the height is going to be twice the height minus 8 inches. And twice the height, and you can say I'm just calling it 2h. Alright, so there's a few examples. of doing some translations.